Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF Everything in That Shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF Everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. Well, we are here to revisit Doom Patrol, which is one of the first shows that showed up on whatever the DC streaming service was that is not a thing anymore and never came to Canada. We got it on Crave, so I can't complain. We were able to watch it somewhat in real time.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely did not have the awareness of like, we don't have enough content to float a whole DC themed streaming service. But what are you gonna do?
It sounded like a good idea though. Like it would have like connections to the comics while you were watching stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could read stuff. I mean, it would have been nice to have, or at least try it out. But what are you gonna do? We're here now.
Yeah, I do agree. It would have been a cool idea to be like, oh, okay, this also has access to the entire catalog of DC comics. I would have been
comics
so on board with that. Just kind of
Yeah.
like Marvel Unlimited right now, and I'm playing catch up on hundreds of years of comics, I guess.
Well, we're only doing season 1, but my assumption is we'll get through all 4 seasons. Yeah, eventually we'll get through all 4 seasons. But yeah, right now we are revisiting season 1 of Doom Patrol. What were your thoughts? I feel like you hadn't watched the full season before we jumped into this.
No, because on the rare occasion we actually got out of our houses and met up in real life over the weekend and had a little bit of preamble talk about this.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed this. This is one of those shows where I'm like, okay, this clearly has an identity of its own.
Mm-hmm.
It is interested in telling its own story. I do like that it does reference other DC heroes. It doesn't pretend like they don't exist.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, this is we're trying to find our identity as a squad, and like and I like the premise of the first season. It's very simple, but it makes sense for a gang of misfits.
I thought they had the right villain for like also a loser villain. Like
yes.
Yeah, I think he really helped season 1 come together. And like you, I really liked the show. I think the big thing for me was it definitely was not a show meant for binging. Like we gave ourselves a short period of time to watch this season before we talked about it, and I was thinking like, yeah, whatever, like 8 episodes, I can do that in a week. And then I was like, 15 episodes, wow. Like if you were I did watch it in real time, but I think I didn't. Obviously, I was just watching it for pleasure. When you have to watch it to like retain stuff and like be able to talk about it, I was like, yeah, 15 in a week was not a good idea for me.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's the reason why we stopped doing Arrow. Is like, oh my god, these 1 hour long shows, they're great. It's fun to watch for entertainment, like you said. But when we're trying to put together a review of the entire season, condensing it all in like an hour and a half is a very, very tall task.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think I already said it. I really did like the season, but it really did benefit from having a week to week release. Like they knew what they were doing on that. Normally, I'm like, yeah, just put it out all at once. But I'm like, no, this was too much to sit through.
Yeah, I agree, because there is like in regards to a TV show marathon, there is a certain point where I know I tune out, and like it's just like, oh, okay, I'm watching. And it did happen here every now and then. But for the most part, I'm like, oh, okay, each episode has enough different about it where I'm like, it will just eventually pull me back in.
Yeah.
So I really, really like that about this show. I do think the writing was good. Acting.
That was the thing I was going to say. It's, you mentioned Arrow. I'm like, this is overall the team that did Arrow and Flash. And it doesn't feel like those shows. Like, they are in the same unit. Well, they're not. They're in different universes, but they are still part of the same television universe because they do show up in each other's things, like even if it's just clips. But I was just like, oh yeah, like this. I feel like this team got the right writing team because it's like
Yeah.
it feels so much more involved.
Yeah. Versus like Arrow and Flash, it's just like, oh, there's one hero and then everyone else is doing support squad stuff, except for like the occasional, like they tried to turn like people in the Flash to like a top tier status, but like with Wally West and all that kind of stuff, but it just didn't ever really work because you're just like, okay, whatever you're doing right now, it is to support Barry and his journey and whatever he's doing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this one actually had a team versus the other ones were like, oh, we're forcing you to work together as a team. And it doesn't really work quite so well. And the shame of it too is the Flash and the Arrow actually still has good writing. Like I will stand by
Oh,
that.
I like I yeah, I like those shows. I don't think I finished Flash, but I did finish Arrow,
Mhm.
and like I didn't mean to put them down so much as I think they feel like different types of shows.
Yes, yes. Versus like this one really does lean well into the whole TV side of things,
Mm-hmm.
with a team up and all that kind of stuff. And
And
the
they're
great thing,
constantly referencing the app and like
yeah,
and
yeah.
how things are paced out. Like it's able to have more fun with itself.
It definitely is, and the thing I like about it is like it's definitely not serious. Like they're
No,
definitely just being like I like how Rita keeps going like, yeah, that's not our job. Like we just stay out of the
yeah,
way.
like
We
we
kind
have
of just
powers, but
exist.
we're not expected to use them to help. Like
Yes.
we just these are burdens for us, and I think overall that's what I liked about the show. Like being
Mhm.
able to spend time with these characters who are trying to figure. Like I feel like all of them, to a degree, are trying to make up for a wrong they did to a loved one. In
Yes.
some cases, multiple loved ones.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there's other heroes like that, and maybe that's just the type of hero I like. That they're like, yeah, like I am doing good. I mean, they eventually want to save the world, but like in
Mhm.
general, I'm doing good. But it's really I'm beating myself up about that time that I made the wrong choice
Yeah.
and harmed
Yeah.
someone I care about.
Yeah, it's tough, right? But I mean, like, if we're talking about character growth and all that kind of stuff, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. It's uncomfortable, and it this show works really, really well in that regard. Like the stuff I see with Cliff, is just like the struggles he goes through just being a robot, not being able to feel, and just like that one scene I remember where it's like, oh yeah, he's making everyone orgasm. He flexed
Yeah,
the
and
wrong muscle, and he just like faked it. He's I just didn't
he's
want
like,
to
yeah,
be
I didn't
left
want to be
out.
left out. Yeah,
Yeah, it's great. And I was like, this is hilarious. Everyone's just like having the time of their lives, which inexplicably, I'm like, okay, it would have been realistic if someone requested to change pants or something like that. But no,
right.
literally no one was, oh yeah, we're good. We're fine now. Like
Yeah,
there's no embarrassing stains. That would have been gone too far.
I think that would have. I'm sure that would have probably been asked to been taken out by some extent.
Absolutely.
But yes,
Absolutely.
you're
But
right.
I would have imagined or liked if Jane was like, all right, just I'll come back to this conversation. I'm just gonna get a new pair of pants.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. But
So the first episode, which is called Pilot, so that's easy, is
mhm.
it's basically the Cliff story, right? Like
Yeah.
you're introduced to everyone but Cyborg,
Yes.
um, and the team. I guess I should say is Elastigirl. I don't like the name Crazy Jane,
Yeah, I
and
don't like that name either.
Negative Man, and then Robot Man.
Yeah.
With Chief being the much more obvious jerk, like Professor X type.
Yeah.
Although I mean, it is funny that this was supposed to come out first, and then because everyone had spies at or Marvel had spies at DC, DC had spies at Marvel. Someone came back to Stanley like, they got this team, man. Like you gotta do something. And Stanley, like, I'm not gonna say he made it all up there on the spot, but he certainly
Mhm.
expedited X Men because it did come out first. But it was
Yeah.
only because he was like, oh, we gotta beat them to the punch. We
Yeah.
gotta put our X Men out first.
Yeah, and that stuff matters. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff that comes out and is like, oh crap, we have to go to the character design board because there's like this other robot character that looks too much like and I'm like, yeah, okay, I get why they do that. And this is, and that's exactly. I'm glad that you referenced Professor Xavier because I'm like, oh man, this is just a douchebag Professor Xavier when talking about Niles because I'm like, if you didn't have any clue the fashion scarf will do it
Yeah,
inexplicably every single scene. It's like you're just wearing a fashion scarf. Like
Or
You're
just in
terrible.
general when you find out like he was involved in everything that ruined their lives.
Yes, yeah, he basically is like the master puppeteer behind everything. It was like, oh, I did this to do whatever.
For some reason, when I first watched the show, I thought this was a season long arc, but in this first episode is when Cliff realizes like he thinks he's the only one that died and that his wife and his
Yes.
daughter lived on, but then it was like, no, you and your wife died. So he's like already like, so you lied to me. Then you just wanted to do this thing to me.
Mhm.
So yeah, you just can't really trust Niles, really,
No.
even though most characters they interact with are like, yeah, I know Niles. Like some of them, like Danny the Street, who is one of my favorite characters, is like, love him.
Yeah.
Niles is great. I wish he was here. And then there's like he's not really a ripoff because I guess Constantine is DC as well, but I feel like he is like a take on Constantine, like I can't remember his name now, the magician type guy.
Yeah, I can't remember him either,
He's
but
also not really that into Niles. But
yeah, I was thinking the entire time, I'm like, isn't Constantine a DC character? It feels like this is
it
a
is.
Constantine
But
knockoff.
I think
like,
they just have like characters that riff on other things.
yeah, that's fair, and probably somewhere in the actual backlog of like Doom Patrol stuff, like Niles probably did have an interaction with this one guy, and he's significant. But I'm just like, oh man, this does feel like Constantine, like a lot. It feels like what I know of Constantine, and it felt
Yeah.
like it would have been a good opportunity to kind of have a bigger name than what this guy was, because
I do like that they live in a world with other heroes, but you're not going to like they're not going to be able to deal with like actual heroes. Like they
yes,
are just in their own thing, so they deal with the D-list other people as well.
yeah. And the only exception to that rule would be Cyborg, which is like one of the
Which
better known people here. But it's just I like how they present him in the way where it's like you should be, and he's like, yeah, I'm
yeah,
not there yet.
and I think yeah, the second episode, Donkey Patrol, is where you meet Cyborg. And I actually liked his interaction. Like I liked how he used the ATM to like mess with the mugger.
Yeah.
I liked how he fought him. I was like, it's not really how I see Cyborg fighting, but I like the fighting in this. So like whatever. I'm whatever. I'm fine with him doing this. So
Mhm.
I do like this version of Cyborg, and he is, I would say, one thing I would hope for him, and maybe it gets better throughout the seasons, is like he's not that eager to help these people, and I'm like, the whole
Yeah.
thing is you're a hero. I feel like you should help. Like again, we're jumping around, but when Cliff asks him to like help hack so that he can be friends with his daughter on Facebook, and he's so like, no, you do this thing for me, and Cliff is like, sure, and then you'll do this for me, right? He's like, Cliff, come on, and I'm like, no, Cyborg, come on, just help him. Like
I
you guys are on the same team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it just felt like I didn't like Cyborg's character here because it just constantly felt like, oh, I'm better than you all, but I'm still here working with you. And he does a lot of, I think, really human things, which are really, really cool. That he's like, yeah, I'm supposed to be this Justice League person, so I'm gonna take leadership role. And when what's his face, when Niles is gone,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, yep, that literally blew up in your face. It
Yeah, no,
literally blew up in your face.
he is. I think all of them are made to look unlikable at points. So
Yes.
yeah, but I still like how they've made it so he fits with Doom Patrol because he's not a
Mhm.
Doom Patrol character. I'm not
I
really sure
agree.
why they put him in there, but like it works for this show. Like especially like his friction with Cliff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anytime I don't see a character in the pilot, but then I see them in the next episode, I'm like, oh, I guess there was something that the test audience scores like really revealed there that they needed a little extra spice or a little extra flavor here. Um,
Yeah,
and Cyborg was that person to them, apparently. And I do like the arc he goes through in this
yeah.
show a lot. And I like the fact that his body's constantly like generating and like replacing his own tissue with like cybernetic stuff. I'm like, that's cool.
And they use Grid, who I know is a cyborg villain. Like it's
Yep.
the cyborg villain. So I like how Grid is even interwoven through this arc and how Grid turns on him in season 1.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a he's got a great arc, but I do agree. Like every one of these characters is made to be unlikable at some point in time.
And he definitely has his moments for sure.
Yeah, he for sure. But like, and everyone else's moments is they're really really good, right? I really like Negative Man's kind of whole backstory of like, okay, what's going on here? The whole the gay thing in the army, and it was really good storytelling and how he had just basically trapped his wife and his children into
Yeah,
this
see, he
facade.
was my least favorite.
Mhm.
Again, well drawn out character. Like,
Yes.
but I was just like, like I wish because, and he gets there. He says like, "Oh no, I ruined my family way before I became
Yes.
this." Like
Yeah.
he knows that, and so I'm not saying this is a flaw in the character or that they
Mhm.
should change it. I'm just saying like I had so much frustration with him because I'm like, dude, come on, like you had your time to be a coward, but you still, and it makes sense he's still a coward. Again, I'm not saying it's a
Yeah.
flaw. I'm just saying like it was frustrating for me because I'm like, yeah, you were a coward back then, and you're still a coward. Like, come on, man, like grow more, grow quicker for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, get some therapy. And like, I like the fact that Cyrus was, we need therapy right now, but I hate how he's like forcing it on everyone, and
Mm-hmm.
that has repercussions and all that kind of stuff. But you're absolutely right. It's not that the things his character is what's the problem, which speaks to how good the writing actually
Yeah,
is. Because I'm just like, yeah, if I feel this way about this character, and I'm like, yeah, it is all your fault. Like before you became this, before
yeah,
any
because
of
it's
this,
not like his the person he was seeing on the side, his boyfriend, was happy with the arrangement either. It's not
oh
like
no,
he
he
was
was
like,
miserable with it.
"Oh, I'm." He's making everyone miserable, not just like his wife and kids. It's like, oh no, like you're being selfish with everyone.
Yes. Yes, and that's the best word or way to describe it. He's just being selfish. Like he has to maintain that facade, and he can't be real or vulnerable with anyone. Even in
Mm-hmm.
that like flashback scene where he gets like in episode like 8 or something like that to with him in that bar, he's still like, this is a gay bar. You can be yourself, and he's still uncomfortable. And I'm just like, yeah, this is on you, man.
Yeah,
Like,
that I was I really like the Danny Street episode, but
yeah.
like when they're like, "Who are you?" and he does the whole musical number, I was so happy for him. I forgot that that was all inside of him. I
Hmm.
was just like, I was so like, okay, like he's finally opening up, and then they're like, no, that was just in his head, which makes sense obviously from the visuals. But I think we're both saying it like it's so well written that I forgot even on the second time watching it that
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, this is not really happening.
Yeah, because when I watched it, I'm like, all right, here we go. I didn't cue in that it was like a dream sequence that he
Mm-hmm.
had or something like that. But I was like, all right, I'm finally gonna start liking this character. Nope, you
Yeah,
made that up.
one of the best things that happens with Negative Man is they're trying to fight in the like town, and he tries to run away, so the being inside of him has to leave to be like,
Yeah,
"Oh my god, like I'm not letting you leave, no."
yeah, he's
And then he when he
falling
can't get on the
over.
buses,
Yeah,
and the woman's even like by like the fifth time he's trying to buy tickets, she's like, "Does it even matter? Like you're not
I
going anywhere."
like that. Yeah, that was really really good. You're not going anywhere. It's yeah, I like that the actual being inside Negative Man actually had its own kind of
Hmm.
things that it wanted to do and all this kind of stuff. And it I hate the fact that it just that was the driving force that made him actually confront a lot of different things.
Yeah, just
Because
the fact that he can't physically leave.
yes, yeah, he's
It's
just
like,
like,
well, I
oh
guess I'm
great,
here now.
yep, yep. It's just like, oh crap, you really are a coward. This really
Yeah.
sucks.
Um, I do like Rita Farr,
Yes,
Elastigirl. I think they show you a bunch of her backstory. Like,
absolutely.
she's on set, she falls into the thing, but even before that, like the way her parents were like, no, no, this is your name, like this is your stage name. So obviously,
Hmm.
Rita Farr's not her name, and she gave up a kid. It's all in this pursuit to be this
Yes.
superstar, famous
Yeah,
person, and
yeah, and she was
um,
terrible with it because she racist.
yeah,
She
and
was
I do
racist.
like that she's just trying to like keep it all together and how she has to
Hmm.
say like, oh, the foot that's melting is my foot. Like I liked that journey that she was on, and that she has, I mean, everyone, they do a good job of making sure that each character has like a one-on-one episode with the other character, or
Hmm.
even if it's not for a full episode. Like there, but I liked her paired up with anyone. Basically, I thought she's clearly got history with Negative Man because
Hmm.
they've been there the longest. I like that she's got like, depending on who's present with Jane, she's got like a certain relationship with them,
Yeah.
and I like where they landed with her and Cyborg, like him trying to be like, you know, like you could be a hero. Like the fact that she's the one that was like, oh no, we don't have to deal with that, and him trying to push her to be that, but her being like, but you know, you're a coward too, right? Like you can just put this all on me. I like that they push themselves in that way.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you there. Whoever the writers were really paid attention to psychology and what the characters would do, and especially with Rita's character being like, my goal is to put myself together. I'm at peace once I am, and I don't want anything to threaten that peace. That's a very, very good nuanced way to write that character specifically, and just how effective it actually was because she didn't want to move, she didn't want to go anywhere. She just
And
wanted
then
to
when they
be
went into
safe.
town, thinking
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, well this will be easy fix, and she starts melting, and obviously it gets away from her because she's completely like, this is embarrassing, it's overwhelming, this is like, she becomes the blob, and it's just like, yeah, this is, I think there's a scene for every character where you feel for them, but like I really
Yes.
felt for her there.
Yeah, and that's what's great about this series is with those moments that you really hate them, there's all those moments that you're like, oh, that's where it comes from, kind of situation. And I think that's such a good writing of a character is being able to empathize, but also being able to, as an audience, hold them with a little bit of accountability to be like, see, negative man, this is why you suck. Man,
Yeah,
this is why you suck.
this is why
Um,
you guys aren't heroes. Like this, I mean, you're gonna get there obviously at
yeah,
some point throughout the series, but like, yeah, yeah, I think it does a really good job of being like, oh no, they just need some training and then they'll be able to fight bad guys. It really is like, no, these are deeply flawed and hurt people
yeah.
that are gonna, like the show does. Like they're gonna need 10 episodes before they can actually start actually coming together.
Yeah, yeah, and Mr. Nobody, when he says that, is like, "All right," and I thought what that was one of the best parts of the season, and genuinely, I'm curious to see what happens in season two without his narration. Assuming that he's no longer a part of, Doom Patrol or something like that. I
Yeah.
really don't know, but like the idea of like his narration holding the whole thing together, but also being so self-aware and it's like, "All right, it's
Like
10 episodes in, we're finally getting to what you really wanted, which is a superhero show instead of a character study driven whatever." And I'm like, oh man, that's exactly what I thought one episode ago.
yeah, I think much like Jessica Jones, this first season sets a pretty high bar with the villain they use because
Hmm.
it's a villain that is so connected to who these characters are, but also the
Hmm.
vibe they want. That I never finished the fourth season. I think I had 5 episodes left,
Hmm.
but I think the issue the show ran into is that it it would feature for the whole season like one of the like monsters of the week that they fought in first season. Like I'm
Hmm.
not saying the same ones. I'm just saying like the same kind of, or they're just evil. You know, we got to stop them. Whereas this was a show where everyone was like at different stages of trying to realize who they really are.
Yep.
Um, and so yeah, Mr. Nobody was a very strong villain to start with, and
Hmm.
I think what I liked about it moving forward was like, yeah, there's always someone to stop, but you are so invested in the heroes that it doesn't really, to me, matter about the villains. Like they can look cool, like no doubt, like
Hmm.
the villains in seasons to come will always look interesting. They'll definitely have interesting things about them, but I don't know if it ever hits the heights of, in terms of villains, not
Hmm.
quality, but in terms of villains of Mr. Nobody.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wish that like they didn't do all the character study stuff in the first season. Not that I know what season is coming up ahead of season two or season three, but I'm just like, it's one of those things where, oh, it would have been great to space this out a little bit more, while they're figuring out their stuff, right? Because I think there's some genuinely funny things where I'm like, did I just watch a donkey consume a whole town? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on?
Well,
Um,
I think some of the great stuff is also like there's the donkey, yes, but like the roach where and or the
yes.
rat where it's like, oh, you killed my mom, I'm gonna kill you guys, and he
Mhm.
messes with Cliff for an episode. You don't know it, but you, like, I think again not the same thing, but I like how they play with time like Arrested Development did, where it's
Mhm.
like you could watch a scene and have a completely, you feel like, oh yeah, I get it, and then episodes later like this was what was happening actually, and it like
Mhm.
brings new meaning to. I again, we've said it a bunch. I think it's really well written, but that stuff like that where you're like, oh, Cliff was being controlled by a rat, and then from that point on, he's constantly saying, no, that was when the rat was controlling me. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Or like they show you that fight scene between Cliff and Cyborg, but you realize he thinks he's fighting his friend who got with his wife, or he thinks got with his wife. Yeah, I just think all that stuff is really good. It makes for a good watch, and I think they'll do stuff like that in seasons to come. Like,
Right.
I don't think you have to worry about that part, but it's just, and there's definitely more for them to like go through. I won't say anything else so
Sure.
you can have a clean experience, but no, not all of the growth hasn't all happened yet.
Okay, that's well, I can't expect all the growth, but to me, the premise of like we got to find Niles and then we'll be together as a team at the end of the season, to me was a good first season.
Yeah.
It let them have enough time to really process a lot of different things, and for us to be like, listen, what kind of show is this? Is this a show that you can trust what you see right off the bat, or are you trusting that there's always a different side of this? And I think that's what's really interesting about a gang of characters that has moments where you genuinely hate them, is the idea of like, okay, that's your perception now, but then later on you're going to see a different angle of this that's going to make you look at the whole thing wildly differently. The thing I didn't like about Cliff and the rat was that, okay, you're showing character growth, but also you're not, because you keep blaming the rat way too much. It's one of those things where I'm like, oh, it seems like you're trying to weasel your way out of this right
But
now.
that rat was legitimately showing him things that weren't there. Like he
I
didn't
get
have a
that.
fair chance.
I get that. It's still like, to me, and this is just a personal thing to me, I'm just like, oh man, if you're supposed to grow up as a human being, you take responsibility for your shit, even though it is a rat that's projecting crap and all that kind of stuff. And in that happened, you just acknowledge the fact that, yep, I was under mind control and I did hurt you, Jane. I said something really shitty. That is still on me, kind of
I
deal.
think
It
the
sucks.
growth is still there. I don't
Mhm.
think it undercut anything because of that episode where he goes to see his daughter and
Right.
he learns the actual extent to what his friend did. Because
Yeah.
pretty sure they were confirming like, no, the wife was dead, so he just took his daughter
Hmm.
to raise her, so she wasn't an orphan. And him, because you would think in a normal show he would give the watch to her, and maybe if it was a funny show he'd mess that up.
Yep.
But I like that he was like, no, I know I'm not there. The growth here is I want her to be happy. That's more important than her forgiving me. That's more important than me getting a chance to talk to her. I fought the croc, I got her watch. She can just have that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let her be happy today. I don't need to bring any nonsense right now.
I agree.
So
And
when
I
he's
thought
when
that
he's
was,
clear headed,
yeah.
and so I guess that's what I mean. Like it's his
Mhm.
actions that mean more than him saying, "Oh, that was the rat."
Mhm. No, you're absolutely right about that. And that's just one thing that I've, as a person, just come to really appreciate, is when someone's actions are consistent with what they actually are saying versus things they say, it just being good enough to cover all the bases. You know what I mean? It's just
Mhm.
like, just because words without action is just manipulation. And like, and that was the one thing I'm like, when I look at him and he's deflecting and being like, it was the rat, it was the rat. He does that thing in the episode with the alligator and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, he actually is just there to support his daughter. He
Mhm.
wants her to feel good, and he's not making it about him. He's just, he sees how he can do that, and he
Yeah.
goes ahead and does it right away. That's a very, very cool thing to see, where I'm just like, okay, yeah, you're immature in some ways, but in this very important way, you showed up.
Yeah, for the thing that he's saying matters the most to him, which is his daughter. Like it
Mhm.
is all he cares about. There's, and I don't mean sexually weird, but there is the weird stuff of how he tries to infantilize Jane or whatever. But
Mhm.
for the stuff that he actually cares about, which is the relationship with his daughter, he does the right thing.
Yep.
And I like that each of them have a chance to do the right thing when Mr. Nobody's like, oh, yeah, like, I'm not here to kill you guys. I'm just going to give you your life and you don't have to worry about anything. Leave me to do what I'm
Mhm.
doing. And I think the one that meant the most to me, well, the two were the Robot Man and Mr. Negative one, where like,
Mhm.
that's where Mr. Negative's like, oh, yeah, like, I ruined this before this moment. So, no, I'm not taking your offer. And Cliff being like, no, like why why would I do this? Like I need to actually fix what I did. I can't just let it keep happening. That's what I would do if I took your deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cliff finally being, just letting that whole like, oh, you cheated on my wife cheated on me. I'm like, bro, the first scene we see is you cheating on her. It's just like
and that's what he's doing in the I can have my life back scene, is cheating on his wife. So he's like, I this isn't right. This is not what should happen.
Yeah, because it wasn't him being reunited with his daughter. It was him being able to cheat and have basically a dick again and all that, and then just being able to feel something and orgasm and all that kind of stuff for real. Which he was a fuckboy before then, and that would have mattered to. So like the idea of everything he went through in this season, him and Negative Man really, really just returning that being like, nope, I am the problem. I've got to change. You can't give me this offer. It's not real. That to me was hugely impressive.
Well, we haven't talked about her yet, but I'm just gonna use the actor's name. No, I guess I have to say it. Jane. We'll just call her Jane.
We're gonna call her Jane. I don't want to call her Crazy Jane, even though that's what she's named. I don't want to do that. That
but I
feel
feels like
terrible.
They don't call her Crazy Jane in the actual show. She's just listed it. Yeah, Jane. I know you have your take on her. And you've already heard my thing, which was when I first watched this, I was like, oh yeah, like she's such a great actor, and I don't think that's wrong, but it was. I think earlier on in the season, you're kind of like, I guess she's really working hard at this, and then I think they find the right characters for her to like truly show how good she is at acting and embodying different things. Like whenever she becomes the therapist or the doctor type character, it is just, even though they're doing the things with her eyes, she is so different than when she's playing Karen, like which is a hilarious conceit. Like she can just make anyone be in a rom-com with her. Like, like she's very good at that stuff. It was more of the British accent stuff where I was like, or when she was trying really hard with like the stuttering kid, I was like, not necessarily her fault. I mean, she's doing it, but it's more like this is what's written for her, so I guess she's got to do it.
Yeah, it's using DID as a superpower is a strange thing to me. I like the spin on this one in particular, where it was like they all had different powers, so it was like legitimately, they're legitimate different personalities and all that kind of stuff. Versus like in Split, where it's like, oh, they're just the beast that has the power. Everyone else is legitimately.
No, it's Split is the same thing.
No,
they're different. They're all different. Like
yes, I know that, but they didn't have
got different strength. Yeah,
correct. But in terms of like the actual villain of it all, you're just like, it is the beast. Everyone's like, okay, this version has, this character has.
What I'm making the distinction is
like
when you say it that way, you make it seem like
I see
they're different because only one of them has a different power.
Right.
That's all I was clarifying.
Gotcha. Yeah. In which case,
different in that way.
Yeah. In which case, you're all right. I did like. Along with Jane's character specifically, like what really helped her character throughout the later episodes in the season was the fact that they committed to giving a visual differentiation, which really helped because the acting alone wasn't carrying it. Because there were characters I'm like, this is different, but it's not good.
Oh, like, I think there's things like where I can't actually tell the difference between Hammerhead or Jane, or like the one that can make swear words that kill you. Like very cool concepts. I was just like, I don't actually know the difference between them, and there doesn't really have to be, I guess, if they're all because I think what is important about this, and I know this still this is still heavily leaning on what people know about DID, but what I do like about it is that they're not claiming it's DID. It's obviously using that those, I don't even want to call them tropes, but they're using these pillars that people understand about DID. But
yes,
I do think it is distinct in that they're saying, no, this is a superhero. We're not saying that like in a normal world she would just have DID or whatever. They're saying like, no. Again, this is part of DID is what I understand, but like this is them protecting this child that was assaulted and molested. And I think what's good about it is when they go in and you see the different actors, that also helps to me make it different. Like it is making it clear, like, no, it's not just the same person flipping through. It really is these different things and showing like the politics of that world. And I understand, like we watched Moon Knight, where they were just head on like, no, this is DID. But
Mhm.
like, what I think this show does well, which I think Split did as well, is which was like, this isn't DID. You know what DID is. We're distinctly trying to make this so that we have the freedom to do what we need to with these characters and not pretend. I mean, they still can insult people and make people feel bad, but
Mhm.
they are making a difference and not saying this is a real world thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's easier to swallow the character that way in the sense where it just like it okay. It doesn't feel like a misrepresentation of what
Yeah.
DID actually is. It's just this is the story they wanted to tell. This is how they fit into it. And I absolutely agree. There's a lot of overlapping tropes with DID. That's not the point. The point is whether or not we can write a good character that struggles with these things and continues to struggle with them. Recognizing that she's got this hugely traumatic backstory that to me I was like, oh my god, they actually went to
Yeah,
that
no,
degree. It
it
was
is
wild.
wild.
Yeah.
But I like that Jane, who seems to be the lead, and they make a point of being like, she's not actually the primary, like, or whatever. Like, but
Yeah, Miranda
even
was.
yeah, like I think that's the kid's name, right? But I feel like they
Yeah.
were saying, and maybe I shouldn't say too much because I know what happens in later seasons. But
Uh-huh.
Jane is the star of our show, but maybe not necessarily the actual lead of that system.
Mhm.
And I like that, as I said, like all of these characters are feeling like they let down. That she is like, yeah, I don't want to let down Miranda, like, or like the little girl here.
Mhm.
And so then the intrigue of the character for me is how all these different powers manifest within it, and these
Mhm.
different characters manifest with it, and like the infighting they have when they go down, like when she goes down and she's like, oh yeah, well, how many times have you been up there? Never. Right, exactly. So you can't tell me what to say. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was just like, I thought that all of that was very interesting.
I agree.
And the
I
train
agree.
system and everything was really cool.
Yeah, when they went to the underground, they went to the well, they saw all those kind of things. I'm like, this is fantastic. This is probably one of my favorite episodes. And it's the idea that Jane herself could be like, none of you know what it's actually like to be up there for that extended period of time. Like, it's just, it puts into context how afraid she is, but
Mm-hmm.
how she shows up. And it's just a wild thing because that is, to me, I'm like, yeah, I get why you would want to take a break. This is
Mm-hmm.
freaking hard. And like, you're just constantly scared. You're constantly defending the little girl inside you and all that kind of stuff, and it's never going to get better. So it's just like, the struggle she goes through with that episode to me is wild. But in the confrontation with the memory and all that kind of stuff toward the end, it does strengthen her because like I do believe it's after that we start to see the visual representations that are different
I
with
think
Jane.
it's like the same episode, but you do
Yeah.
I think you definitely see the father and what
Yes.
he did before you see. Yeah, you're right. Like, you
Yeah.
definitely see the father figure before you see the actual different actors playing the characters you saw
Mhm.
come to the surface at some point,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
obviously new ones.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, I really like Jane. But yeah, obviously, I can appreciate that it takes a bit for shows to know like where they can go and like how to get there. So
Yeah.
I give the first couple of episodes, which admittedly were rough, a pass because I'm like, yeah, it was finding itself.
Yeah, and that's fair. It took a lot of people that are, push back on that. I'm like, the character of Joey wasn't really figured out until season 2 of Friends. It's just like, what is this guy doing? They like if you watch season 1, they clearly didn't know what they were doing with him, and like after season, I'm like, okay, yeah, they knew what they were
Yeah.
doing. So it takes shows a little bit of time to know how the audience is receiving the character that they're putting out there
I feel
too.
like
So
yeah, Parks and Rec is like a great example of that. Like,
yes.
specifically Andy and Leslie were like,
Mhm.
because Andy in the first season is just a jerk, and you're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
he's doing funny things, he's a jerk, and then they're like, oh, but what if he was just a lovable idiot instead of a jerk? And
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, great, well, I'll watch that. And instead of Leslie being like a buffoon, what if the humor is just she's so good at what she does, but she's surrounded by around people who don't really care.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, like they completely changed the characters and it just works. And you're like, yeah, good. Let's move on from here.
Yeah, like season 1 of Parks and Rec is almost like unwatchable once you get to the later seasons. You're just like, this is not the show that I fell in love with. It was. You just and that's why they were like, yeah, we didn't plan on keeping Andy, but then people liked him, so we had to do something with him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it. I really like that show, but yeah,
Yeah.
to your point, I feel like they did a shorter period of figuring out Jane,
Yes.
like, and obviously a lot of that is arc, but it
Mhm.
felt like even within that season, I think her name is Diana Guerrera.
Yes, it is.
Diane Guerrero figured it out.
Mhm.
And I just feel like it is a stronger performance the deeper into the season you get.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot more confidence in each of the portrayals of the personalities. The show itself knew how to represent it. It wasn't just all on her to be like, no, you have to really do a lot of stuff you have to have a tick with this character or whatever. No, they gave her a lot more to work with after that particular episode, which was very hard to watch because it's one of those things that, once you get the full depth of it, it's not like it's a bright story on the other side.
No,
She's
no.
still messed up and just like, oh, she confronted that one thing that makes her life a little bit more tolerable, but ultimately she's permanently messed up because of the child abuse, sexual abuse that she experienced as a kid from her father. It's wild that this show went there.
Yeah, I mean, Jane, there's very obvious like heartbreaking moments
Mhm.
for her. I think one of the big heartbreaking moments for me for Cyborg was when he went on the dating app,
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh, and like he finally is like, whatever, okay, I'll embrace it. I am Cyborg, and then immediately the girl's like, ew, never mind, and then just his delivery of delete the app. I was just like, oh man, that really breaks my heart. I feel so bad for you, Cyborg.
Yeah, yeah, I felt bad in that scene, but also I felt like I feel bad because I get what that feeling's like for someone to be like, oh, that one, like I can't see past that to whatever. But it's like, dude, you were spying on her. You were hacking like buses and watching, observing her that whole interaction. She didn't have any privacy. And the whole time you're asking for privacy mode from your dad.
That was
like,
Grid.
That sucked.
He was watching, but I also am like, what is he gonna do? Close his eyes? Like he actively said, I don't want this.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah, Grid was like, no, I'm showing you. You want to watch this. He's like, I do not want this.
Right.
He said everything you just said. Like, she has no privacy now. I don't want this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I forgot that part. I just remembered like what's going on, that he still watched and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. It's not like he closed his eyes and yeah.
It's just being beamed into him. But yeah, yes. Again, I'm not saying like he was without fault there. Yes, he's still watching. But I also understand that for that scene to work, he needs to be caught up in the moment.
Yes.
And then be brought right back down to earth.
Yeah, and that's something that is believable because especially with this kid that clearly did not have a normal childhood. He's just been trained by his dad to do Justice League stuff, and just like, yeah, you don't have any normal human interaction, and you're probably not gonna because of the cyborgness of you, right? You're either hailed as a hero or shunned as like a monster, depending on what the context of the scenario is. And for him to just want a normal child thing, like, hey, I want to date, I want to feel attractive, is just like, yeah, that's a harsh reality check for him.
Yeah, I thought that was really sad. And yeah, I already talked about the Elastigirl thing. I really felt for her when she lost control in town.
When she blobbed out, yeah.
When she came along. But as you said, they all have done things that are terrible. So you're just like, yeah, it is good writing. You've already said it, that you can clearly see what they've done wrong and how they are where they are, but still, by the end of it, want them to succeed and be happy for them in moments where they're happy, even if it's very brief.
Yeah. Especially because what I thought was really, really effective was with the one episode that they did do where they looked at the original Doom Patrol that Niles had, the first one.
Episode.
That was a
realized
trip.
Like, oh, they've just been mind controlled. This isn't really happening.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, this show is it's got a lot of depth to it for
Because
sure.
of all those characters, the Mentalo, what is his name? Mentalo.
Metallo, yeah,
He is actually a Doom Patrol character, like
yeah.
on the roster. But
Mhm.
I like that they made him a legacy thing. But like it was none of those other characters are are actually Doom Patrol characters.
Sure, sure. But yeah, the idea that they're drugged up in basically a superhero retirement home and all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, and that's where Niles wanted to put Jane or had a backup plan to put Jane at one point. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh boy, that's rough.
Yeah, Niles is such a. It's hard for me to talk about him because I can't remember like what actually happened versus just my opinion on him
Mhm.
over the 4 seasons.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this
I
guy.
mean, there was
What
that
a
one
jerk.
episode where he finds that for lack of a better term, a First Nations person that is controlling that beast and all that. Kind of, he falls in love with her and all that. And I'm just like, oh, you're legit gonna kill your friend here to hide this kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing because and then you're gonna just gaslight everyone and be like, oh, I was the hero, I did that. I'm like, yeah, you're just a slime ball, man.
Yeah,
You're
it's
not a good guy.
unfortunate that I like when he's not there. Like,
I
I'm
don't think it's
always like,
unfortunate. I think that's
I
like out
think
of
you
all the
still, I
characters.
think you should still like the Doom Patrol proper. Be like, he's a dick, but I'm happy to like see him grow. Whereas I'm like, if they killed him, I'd be fine.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm just like, oh, I don't like you, and you don't seem essential to the team because you're gone for the entire first season. So what? I don't know how to feel about this.
Yeah,
Um,
that's my thing. Is I'm not like sad that he's gone. I'm always like, yeah, good. I hope they don't find him until season 3.
yeah, I agree. I'm just
Obviously,
like,
they
this guy
find him.
sucks. Yeah,
But
you're right.
I
They find him, and he's no better. He just kind of continues to gaslight and justify everything he's doing and all that kind
mhm.
of stuff. And I was like, yeah, see, this is every character here has a moment where you empathize with it. This guy, I'm just like, no, I don't
Yeah, I don't
have that moment with him.
like. Yeah, it's hard because I know where the stuff with his daughter goes. So I'm just like, I can't. I don't want to touch on that. But like
It's
first season
fine.
stuff,
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, I don't have a moment where I'm like, oh, he is good because like even when they show him like palling around with Silas Stone, like
Hmm.
Victor's dad, I'm just like, no, get out of there. I don't trust you. I don't like
Yeah.
they obviously show you that you shouldn't trust him, but it's just
Mhm.
like I'm just not on board with you having any contact with these people. I think you're a
Yeah.
terrible person.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't love Silas, but at least I understood where this version of him was coming from. Like, I
Yeah,
understood
he
it.
was out of like protection and
Yeah,
just misguided like ideas on how to protect his family.
absolutely. Absolutely. He did the best he could with what he had, and he made some difficult choices. I get that, and I understand that. With Niles, I'm just like, oh man, there hasn't been a redemption arc for you at all in this season. And it makes it feel worse because they're trying to get him back. And you're like, but why?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think they do a good job of being like he can answer these things because like everyone they meet is like, oh, well, Niles can do this. So you,
Sure, yeah.
as a viewer, you are like, yeah, I guess they have to get him back so that they can at least sort this out. But I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't, I don't want to see him. I don't care.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree. Like
I think that
when
was an interesting episode. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you
no,
saying?
no, go on. Go on.
The episode where they have to like rescue Cyborg and
Hmm.
it seems like Silas is screwing them over, but he's like, you just gotta trust me on this one. And you're just like, yeah, that relationship is ruined. He is not gonna trust you
Yep.
at all. And I know again it's Grid doing this to him, but like that's the episode where he like beats his dad with an inch of his life, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Ultimately. And I'm just like, yeah, like even without the Grid interference, I feel like you would have that would have been a rough go of it. That's how he sees you. You're like you're there, but also pretending like you're gonna give up his friends and him.
Yep. Yep. It's there was not a lot rooting for Silas and
Like he
Silas
came up
Stone in
with a
here.
good plan,
Yes.
like admittedly, but I'm just like, yeah, but like the good writing thing of but now he has to sell it to his son who will not believe him and has no reason
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
or no
Hmm.
reason to even just be like, all right, I'll go with it because it's you.
Hmm. Yeah, there's no trust there. He's constantly like invading his privacy. He's like, I thought I activated privacy mode, and Silas being like, yeah,
It's like, yeah, you did.
there's no
Keep
privacy
thinking that.
mode from the creator.
Yeah,
And just like, oh yeah, that sucks. But
yeah,
again,
there's
you get where his motivation
mhm.
is. You understand it all, and you're like, yeah, you made some shitty decisions and you continue to do so, but I actually understand Silas as a human being. I do not understand Niles as a human being. I'm just like, oh man, you suck. You
I
just
think that's
straight
the
up
best way to
suck.
put it. I don't understand Niles.
Yeah.
I'm confused by him, which must be by design, but it ultimately makes me say what I say, which is I'm fine when he's not on screen. I don't miss him.
Yeah. Yeah. And because whenever he is on screen, I'm like, you gotta take that scarf off, man. I just, you gotta take that scarf off. It's killing you.
Yeah, not a great look.
No.
I also when they get to that episode where I think it's the penultimate episode when they fight the big robot that keeps crushing them, and I'm just like, I don't buy his no. I'm like, surely you can figure out a way to like sort this out. Like it took him so long before he was like, hey, don't go. I was like, why wasn't that like the third thing you tried?
Yeah, seriously.
I was like, I don't. So when they die, I'm like, you're overselling how upset you are because it doesn't feel like you're invested in them beyond like this is my team that I put together. It's not like you have any of the truly deep connection. They're all at a distance from you because you're hiding very key elements of your relationship with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that never gets resolved before you put him in a situation where he's like crying over their deaths.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, yeah, it's he was the least favorite part of this series. This season to me is this Niles character. I'm just like, oh
Yeah,
man.
I like what he facilitates, and
Mm-hmm.
not just putting the team together, but just the people that know Niles and how that means they treat the Doom Patrol
Yeah.
is good. But again, I don't. It's not like I'm like, oh, I just wish he could be on screen with them. I'm always like, I'm enjoying this time away from him.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like Negative Man where you're like, listen, I get the context of this character. I get why he's a coward. He's been hated on his whole life. But in
Mm-hmm.
that one scene where his parents are like, what if he's this way? What if he's
It's like,
queer
oh
and all
come
this
on,
kind
you
of things?
know
Like,
he is.
yeah, and it's just like, oh my God. Yeah, he's been taught to hate himself ever since
Mm-hmm.
birth. It's just like all of that makes sense. All of it. But then Niles, you're just like, oh my God, you just need to go away now. Just go away and like, let these people just exist and have their fun in the Doom Patrol house.
Yeah. Well, we didn't say, but I love that Mr. Nobody's plan ultimately is to suck them into the white spaces between panels in a comic book. I
Yeah,
thought that was amazing stuff.
I thought that was great. That was so effective. It's just like, yeah, now you're a nobody and all this kind of stuff. Is just like for him to be surpassed in his own like definitive final moments. I'm like,
Well, yeah,
this is
when he's like,
great.
wait, are you the narrator? Because we were able to do this and we've never even tried this before.
Yeah, yeah. When the Professor Jane character comes out, it's like, oh, you seem to be saying that you're in control, but
Mm-hmm.
we took over this relatively easily. I'm like, that's hilarious. That's hilarious because it's true. He just started narrating, and it just Jane started narrating. It just immediately took over everything.
And that's what I mean by like, it was the right villain for this show because,
Hmm.
yeah, there's deep stuff that we've talked about, but ultimately it's like a funny show.
Yes.
And so, like, that is a funny moment.
Hmm.
And it works for that. Like we talked about it during the tier list of like a villain where you're like, yeah, this moment can happen. Like this funny moment can happen. It's not
Hmm.
gonna make the villain look like out of character to like react this way to this funny moment.
Hmm.
I don't know if they ever get there again with the villains, but uh, shows growth for the show. They
Yeah.
can't just keep repeating it.
Yeah. I did also like Mr. Nobody's backstory episode where you see him and his
With
wife
his wife,
there.
yeah, the wife being like, so I'm just stuck with you and you're a loser. Like you're not like
Yeah.
who believes in your plans other than me? Just as she starts piecing it together of like,
Hmm.
sorry, they laughed you out of the room. So you don't have good ideas. I just think you have good ideas. This is
Yeah.
bad. This is really bad.
Yeah. To me, I'm like, oh yeah, yikes. That is rough. Like just and then how the cast like at the end of it is like, oh, you did this all because of a girl? Like I'm just like,
He's like, oh,
this
that checks
is
out.
great. It's so great that this character is just doing all these things, think he's so great, but like the rug got pulled out of under him so quickly and so easily. I'm like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It's a good time for a first season.
Yeah,
I thought they did a really good job of establishing like what to expect from it.
yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there's some banger characters that I never thought I'd care about, like Danny the Street,
Hmm.
and the little cockroach Ezekiel. I
Cockroach is
was,
great.
it's
I
just like
I
this
even
is
like
so
the guy who
cool.
eats beard. I thought that was such a great
Oh,
character.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That guy was hilarious to me, and the fact that you find him on the street later on, and
Hmm.
he's just like a totally
Yeah, on
different
Danny in the
guy.
Street. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then I and this is like obviously rough, but like when you see him just singing a song over and over and over again because he has to keep partying and all that, I'm
Hmm.
like, oh man, I really do feel for this guy right now. Because he was like, I can be myself now. I don't have to eat beards anymore or whatever, and just all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden he's just like, yeah, I don't like this part either.
Yeah,
I'm like, it's a good character. It's really, really good.
yeah. Everything Danny the Street related was a okay in my books. I
Yeah.
Again, it's not even a character that has a voice. You just read what it has to say, and I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
just Danny the Street. What a great character. What a great time.
Yeah, it's great time. And I like what Danny stood for as a safe space for anyone in the gender queer LGBTQ kind
Hmm.
of like community and all that kind of stuff. It
Yeah,
was
that agent
such,
that like finds
yeah,
themselves. I'm like, this is some good stuff.
I
I'm into
agree.
this.
Yeah, it's like when his agency is like, "What did they do to you?" And it was like, "Oh, there's
Yeah,
gonna
like
be some fighting."
the guy was just like, just can't be happy for you. No, no, this must
Yeah,
be something went wrong here. And
yeah,
he's like, no, this is me. And he's like,
yeah.
no, no, some alien took over your mind. Yeah, that Bureau of Normalcy or whatever they were called. I'm like, yeah, they were effective as well. Actually,
They
like
were.
anytime they showed up, I'm like, no, something bad's gonna happen.
Yep, yep. It was that was a really really good stuff there. Um, Yeah, no, anytime I see a character liberated in being allowed to be who they naturally are, I'm
Hmm.
like that it just hits the nail on the head for me because like every time you see dating history, I'm like, yes, this is why I like you.
Hmm.
You're helping people achieve their natural actual identity, whatever it might be. And it's just like it's the most magical thing because when he does uh cross dress and go drag and all that kind of stuff, I'm like you are so alive right
Hmm.
now compared to the other character. The other character is like bim bim bob,
Like
I'm a robot kind of
obviously
thing.
like more timid. Like obviously he's an agent. He's not like scared of everything, but
Sure.
just yeah, everything he says, like, he's alive when he
Hmm.
gets to be with Danny the Street.
Yeah, absolutely glorious, like glorious episode. And I'm just like the people that hate on that episode. I'm like, man, you all suck because you need to see how great this actually is and how cool and liberating it is for a show like this to actually weave that naturally into the whole narrative of like this is the gender queer whatever thing and just like having that naturally a part of it as opposed to a forced element of it,
No, yeah, like
right?
it's all about realizing who you are and
Yep.
finding comfort. Obviously, our main characters haven't fully got there yet, but
Hmm.
you get to see other characters get there.
Yep. Yep. And
Is there anything else you wanted to mention, or did you want to
not
wrap
really.
this?
There's been very rarely a show that has hooked me the way this has. Like, even though I said what I said about like, oh yeah, after the third episode, if I'm marathoning, it all seems to blur together. I also said like this had enough of those weird, like completely unique moments where it just pulls me back in. I'm like, I'm not looking at my phone anymore. I am watching this.
Hmm.
It's a great thing. It knew what it was doing in terms of writing. The character development got there eventually, and it's just the visuals I really like too. I
Yeah,
think the
me
show
too.
looks really good.
There was like that when they go to that castle, the whole book thing where that kid is a book that
Yeah.
they're gonna kill. Well, it turns out it's the dog, but like I I was like, oh, why does it look so fake? And then you realize, oh, because they're in a snow globe, it has to look like that's just good production design. Actually,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Again,
so
like,
good.
something where you're like, you feel some way about it, and then the show reveals some more information, and you look back and you're like, oh, okay, it's a well thought out and well written show. Got it.
Yeah, because when I watch, I'm glad you brought that up because when I watch that episode, I'm like, am I watching a different show? Did Crave glitch out on me or something like that? And it's showing me, I'm like, oh, I see what's happening, and it's awesome.
Mhm.
It's so good. Once I made that connection right after, I was like, this is fantastic for sure.
Great show. All right, let's rate this show. I'll give it a 9.
Yeah, I'm doing 8.5 on this for sure. This is a wonderful show, and I can't wait to see season 2.
Well, we'll get there for sure.
We're getting there for sure.
We did say off mic, season 2 is 9 episodes, so it's a bit easier to digest.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. Not next episode, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're part of the That Shelf Podcast Network with other great shows like Bad Game Movies, Contra Zoom Pod, and Springfield Googleplex. So please go to thatshelf.com. You'll find those shows, our show, and more shows. If you'd like to hear older episodes of our show, Spoiled Rotten, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten, or the podcast catcher of your choice. You've got options in that way. And if you want to get in touch with us, let us know what other shows you'd like us to revisit, then please hit us up on at TDF Spoiled on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. And our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. So again, options. Yeah, we will be back. Goodbye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.